Hello and welcome to today's new advanced Photoshop project. What we're going to do is we're going to take this image or any image you want and convert it into a vector-based artwork. So it's going to look like this when we're done. Then I'm going to give you some tips on adding some color back into it to kind of give it a cartoon-like effect. So you can use this image here or any image of your choice. But if you first want to follow along with the exact same image, to practice what you learn, you can go to pixabay.com, do a search for bearded man, and the image is right here. Depending on when you watch this video, it may be on a different page. So just try and search for this particular image here. Or you can type in this exact URL to go directly to it. You can download it for free and it comes in different resolutions. I find the higher the resolution, the better quality vector file you get. And that goes for your own images as well. I would start with the highest resolution file that you have. Anything lower than this here and you're not going to get very good results. You're going to end up with some pixelization, even on a vector-based file when we convert it to vector. So it's better to work with a higher quality image as much as possible. Okay, so go ahead, download the image, and we'll go ahead and get started. So we're going to just cut out the head of this person here, but you don't have to. You can actually work on the entire image if you want, but we're just going to isolate the face for this project. So go ahead, open up your image, double click on the background and click OK, and then we can start making our selections with our quick selection tool. So make sure you have this selected. We have a ton of different options for selecting in Photoshop, so I recommend using what works best for you. There's no right or wrong tool for selecting as long as it gives you the results that you want. I'm going to use the quick selection tool because I find it works the quickest, and I'm just going to click around the outside of the face, basically selecting the background. Then if I hold down my Alt or Option key, you can see that the cursor for that tool changes from plus to minus. So now I can remove any part of the selection that I don't want included, and I'm just going to go around the edges here and the beard as well. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just going to be a rough selection, and when we convert it to a vector file, a lot of this detail is not going to be in there anyways. So go ahead and make your selection, and then the next step is to right click on the image and select and mask. So we need to refine our selection to just the face, and we're going to add a mask so we can get rid of the background. So this is something new in Photoshop CC 2018. It's been out for a little bit, so if you're working with an older version of Photoshop, you're not going to have this panel over here to the right, and you're going to have something completely different. You can still do it. What you need to do is go to Selection and inverse it, and then add a layer mask that way. But we're going to do it this way because we have some options here to further refine our selection if needed. For this project, we don't. We're just going to keep everything set at 0 for all the different sliders. And then we're going to select invert, and now just the face is selected. Next, we need to output our selection to a layer mask. Once you click OK, we can then just see the head and then our layer mask over here. And as you know, black removes, white adds. So everything in white is what was selected, so that keeps the face visible, and it removes the background with anything in black. So you could technically go in here with your paintbrush and paint with black or white to add and remove from your selection, but we're not going to do that because we're just transferring it to a vector file anyways, so we're not going to see a lot of that detail. But if you wanted to, you could bring back some of that background as another creative option, and you could lower the opacity and try something like that. So experiment with doing some different things like that to come up with some different types of artwork. Okay, next we're going to further define the edges and the detail of our image by selecting the image, and then we're going to go up to Filter, Sharpen, and we're going to select Smart Sharpen, and we can increase or decrease the amount of sharpening with amount, and the radius will be based on the number of pixels, and then we can reduce the noise as well. So these are the settings that I have. You can adjust them to whatever you want based on your image and how much detail you want to define for your vector image. If I increase this, you will see that it becomes much sharper and the edges are much more defined, which creates more information for our vector file. And if you want less detail, then you would use a lower amount. I'm going to stick with around 200%, and I'm just going to click OK. Okay, so the next step is to blur the overall image and remove some of the detail in the areas that doesn't have a lot of detail. So like in the face around this area here and here, there's not a lot of detail. So we're going to smooth this out so it's not part of the vector. Otherwise, it's going to be too busy. So we're just going to tone down the overall vector effect by going up to Filter, Stylize, and then select Diffuse. Okay, so in your mode options here, we have a few different options. Normal is just a normal diffuse. Darken will make the overall image darker, or lighten, and then, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, anisotropic smooths out the overall image and further defines the detail from light to dark. So we're going to select that option, and you can see when you turn it on and off, it smooths it out so it's not as noisy as it is right now, and it further defines the edges created from that over sharpening that we did in the last step. Okay, so let's go ahead and click OK. Now if you want, you could actually apply this effect again by going up to Filter and selecting Diffuse, and it will apply those same settings again. And what it's going to do is further smooth out the overall image and further defines the edges of the detail. So I'm going to apply that again, and it's entirely up to you if you want to do that or not. So go ahead and experiment with that option. Okay, so we smoothed it out, and now we're going to go back and add sharpening again to help define those edges just a little bit more. So let's go back up to Filter, Sharpen, Smart Sharpen, and then just apply the same settings again. And now those details pop out a little bit more than they did before. Okay, let's go ahead and duplicate our layer with Command or Control and the letter J, because we're going to apply another type of sharpening, and then we're going to pass it through the layer below with a specific blend mode. And again, we're just doing this over and over again just to help further define the edges of the details in the image, and those details and edges will then become part of that vector file. So we're going to go back up to Filter, down to Other, and select High Pass. So this is going to convert it to a grayscale with some RGB color pixels in there, but it's mostly going to be grayscale. And I'd recommend setting the radius between 2 to 3, maybe 4 at the most. I'm going to do 3 for this image. Okay, now we need to change the blending mode from normal to vivid light. Okay, now we're going to go up to Layer, and we're going to add an adjustment layer called Threshold, and we're adding an adjustment layer so we can work non-destructively, so we can go back and make adjustments to that threshold as needed if we want to add or remove part of the selections for that vector file, and that'll make more sense once we get to that point. So we're going to go ahead and select Threshold, click OK, and then it converts it to black and white. So now you're starting to see the final image before it's converted to a vector file. We can increase or decrease the amount of detail in our vector file by adjusting this slider to the left to remove detail and to the right to add detail back in. So you can adjust this to whatever setting you want. I'm going to select something around 100. I'm going to go ahead and close this. Okay, so the next step, we're going to merge all these layers into one layer, but I want to keep all these layers intact in case I want to go back and adjust them later on. So again, we're going to continue working non-destructively. So to convert all these layers into a new layer, what we need to do is go up to Layer, scroll down to Merge Visible, but before you click on this, I want you to hold down your Alt or Option key and then click Merge Visible, and that adds all the layers into one layer. So if we turn these off, we can see we have the exact same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and turn these layers off for now. Okay, I want to add a white background to the layer below it, so I'm going to select Threshold 1, click on New Layer, and then click on this icon here to add a solid color. So select that, then select white, click OK, and that gives us a white background. So our next step is to clean up our image before we convert it to a vector file. We have some bags under the eyes here. I want to remove that, this as well, and some other things as well. So what we're going to do that is we're going to click on this icon to add a layer mask, and then with our brush we can paint with white or black to remove. And as you know, black removes, so I've set my foreground to black. And we also need to make sure that our brush is set to 100%, and then we can click on any area that we want to remove, and then that won't be included in the vector file. So I'm just going to go around a little bit here and clean this up a little bit. There's also some gray stuff down here below the beard. So just go around the image and make sure that you don't have anything in there that shouldn't be there. Alright, let's go ahead and take this layer and duplicate it with Command or Control and the letter J. You can go ahead and turn this layer off, and then you want to right click on our layer mask and select Apply Layer Mask. So we still have the original adjustments down here if we need to go back and refine it. Okay, so the next step is to do the conversion from raster to vector. In order to convert it to vector, we need to make a selection of all the black in our image. The best tool to do that is our color range tool, which is under Select and then select Color Range. From here, you can increase or decrease the amount of that selection. We want to select all of it or as much of it as possible. So I'm going to set this at the maximum, which is 200. Once you click OK, you'll then see those little dancing ants showing the selection. Okay, now we need to convert it to a path to create the vector. And to do that, we need to select a selection tool. It doesn't matter which one, any selection tool will work. So I'm just going to press the letter W to grab my quick selection tool. Then I'm going to right click anywhere on the image and select Make Work Path. We're going to set a tolerance of between 2 to 5. I'm going to set mine at 3. Again, experiment with this to see the different types of effects that you can get based on the tolerance. So I'm going to click OK, and then that's going to convert the selection into a path. Depending on the complexity of the image and the speed of your computer, it could take a few seconds to maybe a minute or more in order to convert everything into a path. And that's what all these little blue squares are the path of that selection. So if we go up to Window and turn on Paths, you will see your working path right here. And if we delete that path, then it removes it. So I'm going to undo that with Command or Control and the letter Z. So the next thing we need to do is convert that path into a vector by adding color to it. And we can do that by creating a new layer. Then we're going to add a solid color. You can choose any color you want, and then it's going to fill in that path with that color. So I'm going to choose red. And then if we turn off this layer, and then if we go inside of our path tab and select this option, we then get our vector artwork. So how cool is that? Now adding color back into the face is real simple. All we have to do is turn off our color fill, turn on our image layer, and we have color back in, but we want to maybe tone it down a little bit and smooth it out a little bit. So what we can do is duplicate this layer. I'm going to go ahead and turn this one off so we have the original in case we want to start over after we make our adjustments to this layer. So we're going to go up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and then we're going to change the radius to any setting we want based on the effect that we want. So I'm going to do 6 pixels, and that tones it down a little bit. We can also add a new layer, fill it with white, and then with this layer selected, we can drop the opacity down to tone it down even more. So that's another option. The other thing you can do is click on your layer mask here, right click and select Disable Layer Mask, and that will bring the background and the rest of the image into focus as well. And you can also tone it down again if you wanted to, if you don't want the background as prominent. So there's a lot of different options you can choose based on your creative vision. So the only thing I can suggest is take what you've learned in this project and experiment with the different settings and see what kind of artwork you can come up with on your own, and you may be surprised by some of the things you find based on your exploration. And I would recommend take notes as you are experimenting and trying out different things so that you can go back and reproduce what you created. If you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A section. I would love to see your finished artwork as well, so go ahead and post those in the Q&A section as well. Thanks for listening, and have an awesome day.